Hello guys, I'm Super Ron, welcome back to the channel, and this week we're back down the G unit and we're back with my 2004 Audi RS6. I've had this for about 5 years now and people keep asking for more videos on the Audi, but truth be told, I just haven't had any problems with it. It gets used all year round, it's a super practical family car. We take it on holiday everywhere, it's been all around the country, and apart from its horrendous fuel consumption, it just keeps on chugging. But this week, we've had a light come on the dash. We've got an engine management light, and unfortunately, it's not a great one. So the code that has come up is camshaft performance over advanced or system performance. Now, as many of you will know, before the RS6, I had a C5 S6. So I know these engines very well because component-wise, they're almost identical. Just the RS has the addition of twin turbos. And I had this exact code come up on the S6 as well. These V8s have both a cam belt and a cam chain. It's a very common thing on double overhead cam, VWs and Audi. They're doing it right back to the Mark II Golf GTI 16 valve, where the cam belt only runs the exhaust cam, and then there's a small chain in the rocker cover that joins the two cams together. So all the 1.8 20 valves are like this, Mark III Golf, even the V6s, the 2.4, the 2.6, the 2.7 and the 2.8, the V8s in the C5, S6, RS6, S8, they're all on this configuration of the cam belt just runs the exhaust cam, and that's linked to the inlet cam with a chain. And between the two cams, there's a tension that goes up and down, and that varies the timing between the inlet camshaft and the exhaust camshaft by adjusting how many links there is at the top and the bottom to rotate the inlet. So the rotational sensors that are around the engine, you have the crankshaft at the bottom, and then there's a camshaft sensor on each inlet cam. So the bottom sensor knows what the crank is doing, the cam belt is running the exhaust cam, the chain is running the inlet cam, then there's a sensor on that. And if it sees one of these sensors comes out of line, it chucks up this code. So what happens on these, because the adjuster is moving up and down and always pushing on the chain, the plastic guides wear and eventually break, which is exactly what happened on my S6. I had this code come up on a long drive home. My plan was to take it down to the unit the next morning, went to start it up, and chaos. The guides broke and the chain was just flapping around. Luckily on these, they don't tend to do much damage, but the problem is the price. I did my S6 back in 2015, and these tensioners from Audi was £415 plus the VAT, and then with the chain as well, it is about £700 when the chain is only about this big, and that is only on one side. So I've just checked with TPS today, and the price has gone up even more. For the exact same part, it is now over £600 plus the VAT. The chain is £80 plus the VAT, and that comes in at £850 for each side. I have in fact still got the old tensioners on my offerings to the God of Speed. So on the shelf of destruction, the offerings to the God of Speed, we've got all my broken bits. Here's all the valves from my C20 let Astra when the cam belt come off one day on the way back from billing. We've got a bent rod there and an exploded oil pump. They were both from the Astra, separate occasions. We've got the backwards fuel filter that killed the Zafira. We've got some broken rockers. We've got the shells that I've just taken out of the Zafira. Got the melted spark plugs from the Zafira. We've got possibly the last ever RS6 oil filter from Audi. We've got the remains of a rod and a bit of a block from my 3 litre Audi. We've got a cam pulley that snapped the Woodruff key off my 3 litre Audi as well. And here are the tensioners from the S6. So they're just the same as like the 20 valves. They should have, and they have the little guides that sit on top, and that's where the chain runs, one on there and one on the bottom. And what happens is they wear grooves in, get thinner and thinner until they go all the way through and destroy themselves. And then what happens, the chain then runs on the metal and makes a right mess. So these are the two off my S6. I did this one, then 2 years later, this one went. But like I say, at the price, you don't change them just out of peace of mind at 700 quid a time. And then you have to fish all the remains, usually out of the sump. So when I bought the RS6 5 years ago, he said he had just done the cam belt and the cam chains, but he did it all through his friend's work, so there was no paperwork with it, which was a little bit suspicious. But when I took the covers off the front, I could see it was a new belt, so I had no reason to doubt things. When I first got it, it was leaking from the rocker covers, so I popped both rocker covers off, and everything did look clean and tidy in there. So I resealed them and put them back on. Then a while later, there's a little weep from the sump, so I took that down, and I did find some of the remains, like I'll show you on the shelf there, of a tensioner guide exploding and making its way down. So at some point, this has lost its tensioner. So I'm wondering if that's why he did replace them. But what I have seen, people that don't want to pay £600 a time, is you can buy just the shoes off eBay for about a tenner. Now for me, that wasn't worth the risk of doing it, and those shoes aren't available from Audi separately. So the fact that this has happened again in only 30,000 miles makes me wonder whether he did actually put fresh tensioners on, or whether he just put shoes, or maybe even a second-hand tensioner. So before I go ordering anything, I'm going to pop the rocker cover off and just see if there's anything evident, if they are starting to break up, if it is right to the end of its tolerance. Problem with these, being the twin turbo, there is a lot more to take off before you can get to the rocker cover. On the S6, it was nice and easy. It's just coil packs off, rocker cover off, and you're there. With these though, obviously you've got the massive air boxes on the top. At the front, you've got the boost pipes going down, so you can't get to the cam belt. So there's a lot more to strip down before I can even get to the rocker covers. But there are a few static tests I can do first. On VAG-COM, you can read the cam timings of each side and compare them. And also we can do an actuator test to see if the solenoids are working before we even start it. So before I take anything off, I'm gonna plug it into VAG-COM, look a little bit more in the measuring block and see a couple of tests that we can do. So first off, with the VAG-COM, we can go into engine, fault codes, so we don't worry about left engine mount solenoid valve, that's always there. But we've got camshaft position sensor 2 G163 and engine speed sensor G28 incorrect correlation, which like I said, they're just not synced up. So we can activate each sensor, it will make a click and that'll just show us that the wiring is working. So the evap purge valve, yep, clicking away. N75 valve, clicking away. Camshaft timing adjustment bank 2 N28. This is our actuator for the adjuster. So let's see if this clicks. I can hear the fuel pump, I can't hear much clicking. Let's try the next one. So this is the other camshaft timing. Let's see if this clicks a bit louder. Aha! Okay, so what we've got, when I activate each solenoid around the car for all the valves, they're all making a loud clicking noise, except for the passenger side bank 2 cam chain tensioner, which is strange, which means it's not pulling the tensioner up and down, which is why it's throwing up this fault. So I have heard you can change just the solenoid with everything in situ, and I have got my 2 old solenoids up there. So it might be worth giving it a try to see if I can change just the solenoid, because otherwise I've got to take pretty much the whole front end off, cam belt off, cams out, but there may be a reason why that solenoid is not clicking if the tensioner is further worn. So I'm just going to try that again so we can just double check that that was reading right, but there was a definite loud clicking from the driver's side, but when you activated the passenger side one, the one that's throwing a fault, there was no sound at all. So I've just got the old faithful ElsaWin laptop out, so now I can check what the resistance and the value should be on that solenoid, so we can just probe it, check it, and continue from there. Okay, we're on the ElsaWin, which is like the main dealer Haynes manual. Tells you all the equipment you need. You need the big computer rig, all the parts you need. Okay, so if one of the valves is not activated, does not click, electrical test the camshaft control valves. To test the bank solenoids 1 and 2, remove the air cleaner housing, check solenoid valves on the right side, which is the one we want. So we've taken that cover off. There is our plug. So it tells you the value. We've got to check the resistance across the solenoid, and it should be between 10 and 18 ohms. If specification is not obtained, renew the valve. If specification is obtained, check voltage supply, check wiring. So it gives you the values on the pins of the plug. So let's check this valve out. I think we can get to that side without too much trouble at all. Because they're 20 valve heads, one has got the chain this end, and then it's the chain this end on the other side. And this is the one at the front. We can get to that pretty easy, and we can. It is right here. So that's the solenoid itself that isn't making the noise, whereas the other one is under there somewhere. Okay, for our baseline, I've got my old valves off the S6. So these didn't actually fail in the solenoids, it was the plastic tops that failed. The solenoids themselves were still okay. So I'll check the resistance on these. So it should be between 10 and 18 ohms. So we're set on 200 and we have got 17.5. That's coming up as. So high 17s on that one. Same again, 17.1, 17.2. So these valves are okay. So now let's check on the car. So we've got a plug here. 16, which is in spec. So these are in better condition than what the S6 ones are. All right, let's check our powers to the plug to see if it is activating it. Something strange is going on. If the solenoids are okay, that'll make me very, very happy. Well, voltages and wiring are all fine. So the other test it specifies is for checking the system. So we've got to wheel in our massive computer again, but we've got our VAG-COM. You go down and it gives you the measuring blocks values of the control test. For bank 1, bank 2, it's got to be above 80 degrees, rev it more than 2000, and it'll do a system test. So let's try that. So to do the system check, it's got to be over 80 degrees coolant temperature, so we'll get it up and running. But we're stone cold at the minute. And the other thing which makes me doubt those guides a little bit is it doesn't really rattle when it starts up. So this is a completely cold start. And there's no cam rattle. So we'll just let this warm up for a bit. Coolant temperature, 24 degrees. So we'll let that warm up. All right, we are at 83 degrees, so we can perform the test now. Okay, bank 2 result say system okay. Something I thought I could check on the actuation is I could actually plug this one in and see if this one clicks when I perform the actuation test. And that'll prove that this solenoid isn't clicking, but it is getting its signal. So I'll just run through it again. We'll just see if that will click now. It's been running. We are clicking now. So this wasn't clicking before, but it is now. Did we just have a loose connection? Here it is running with the adjustment status. This is bank 1, this is bank 2, this is the one we got the problem with. But if you look at them, they're not really acting any differently. They're just slightly adjusting each. We've got no light on the dash now. Were we just playing with a stuck solenoid? See if we've got any engine management lights. Ah, hold on, look at this now. The codes and bank 2 has gone off the scale. So this is reading from the cam sensor. That is well out. So yeah, we have definitely got a problem on this bank 2. That is just shot round. Okay, so I've been messing around, revving it, disconnecting stuff, trying it, moving it, and we're not getting any faults up anymore. And what we've got our 2 bank adjustments there, adjustment status and engine RPM. And if I rev it a little bit, adjustment status come on, then those both go up to 20, 21. Let off the throttle, adjustment status off, and they both return to 0. So I think there's only 2 settings. When the solenoid is off, it sits at this setting. When it's on, it goes up to 20 on these 2. So as you rev it, that goes on, these go to 20s. So we're just hovering around, status is on, these are both up. If I let off the throttle, they both go down to 0. And so we are in range. So specification for idle is between -3 and +6. We are bang on 0 there, so that's perfect. And under load is between 16 and 25, which we're hovering 20, 21. So this all appears to be working fine. So one thing I am sure on now is these aren't genuine tensioners that he fitted. I thought they were because they have got the part number down there. You can just see it there etched in. But when you compare them to the standard ones and how the markings are cast in, it is completely different down there. I think the solenoids are genuine. They've still got the same numbers across the solenoid and all the same markings. So at the minute I'm in a bit of a quandary what to do, because it seems to be all working fine. When we first come in here and I did the actuator test, that solenoid definitely wasn't clicking. So whether it's a problem with the plug, whether the solenoid had got stuck for some reason, I don't know. But now everything is checking out on the computer. We've not got no fault codes coming up. It might be that forcing the solenoid backwards and forward has just freed it off and it is okay. I think what I'm going to do is take it out for a test drive, take the laptop with me and just see if everything still carries on being alright, where it goes from the transition from being on and off on the cam adjustment. So it might be a lucky escape. So there's that little bit of worry in the back of my mind that these aren't genuine adjusters that he fitted. Both of them are in fact aftermarket parts. But they've been on there 5 years. I've done 30,000 miles. So I'm not going to take them off just for the sake of it. So I think, yeah, let's take this out for a test drive and see if we get any problems. Right, let's take this out for a little drive. I've got the laptop here, Fast and Furious style. So I'll just keep a little eye on that, see what that's doing. But already it seems to be driving so much nicer. Before, when you had it in gear but with the brake on so you weren't actually moving, you could feel that the car was shaking. It was really unbalanced. And I think that's because the cam timing was stuck on the on position, even when it was on idle. We've got those lights on and it did come on straight away when I cleared it before. So I'll take it for a little drive out. We'll just double check everything is happy. But even just idling, coming up to a junction, foot on the brake, so we're still in gear, and before the whole car was really choppy just because the valve overlap was wrong. And we're sitting here at 680 RPM, adjustment status is off, and they're both sitting on 0, which is spot on. And then as soon as you accelerate, adjustment status on, and we're both on 20, 21 on both sides. I think the problem is one side was getting stuck and staying on the 22 degrees. So when you're accelerating, both sides were on, so it didn't make much difference. It's only when you were idling and sitting there it's really, really lumpy. If this has solved it, I'm going to be so happy, because that would have been getting on. I'd have to do both sides and the cam belt as well, so it would have been easily, well, about £2,000 worth of parts, which I'm afraid that would have to have been goodbye Zafira GSI, just to pay for the parts for this. Down to a stop, turns itself off, idling perfectly smooth now. Everything seems happy, and I am very happy. Let's really put it under some strain and give it some RPM. So yeah, it's just sitting there on 0, 0 at the minute. Let's give it a test. Ready? Forgotten how fast this is sometimes. Lucky we've got this private test site. Let's come back to a stop. Zero, zero. Right, let's get it back to the G unit, give it one last final check. Hopefully this is it solved. And I noticed just as we pulled in, idle's gone a bit lumpy again. I looked down and that side's got stuck. Oh, I really thought we'd fixed it. So especially when you put it in gear, sit here, idle's really lumpy. See, the whole car's shaking because we're stuck on that bank too. I think I'll give the solenoid a little tap and see if that releases it. See if it's a solenoid problem or the actual actuator itself. Oh, I thought we had it sorted then. No change. So I've just taken the solenoid off one of the old ones, and all this is an electrical solenoid. 12 volts goes in there and this pin comes out and in to push, and that pushes on this plunger. So all that does is moves this up and down so it uncovers or covers up a hole for oil to squirt through. So that sits in there like that, and the solenoid sits on there. So what I'm just wondering, these are easy just to bolt off and bolt on without disassembling anything else. I don't think it is a solenoid problem because when I was tapping the solenoid it wasn't moving. But as a shot for nothing, I'm going to try this solenoid on there as it's nice and easy. After that little trip to the racetrack, everything here is pretty hot. Should just be able to get in there. Hot, hot, hot. I'll just see if I can get this plunger out of this one as well. It's not magnetic. There we go. And there they are out, side by side. They look exactly the same. Same with the little plunger. Looks exactly the same. Something I did notice, don't know if you'll be able to pick up, there is some sludge in the end of that. Or there's something, bit of sealer or not sure. I wonder whether that's holding it up from plunging in and out like it should be. So I might try and clean that up a bit before I put it back together. See, that one's spotless out of the old one. That's hard, whatever that is. So I've just been down the hole where that plunger goes, getting it all cleaned out, just digging it out with some tissue. And I found some more bits down there. I don't know if they're like bits of carbon or it's just something that have gone up the chute. Don't know, but if that's around this and gets wedged, so this can't go up and down, then it can't change where the oil is going, whether it's above or below. And that could be why the solenoid wasn't clicking, because if it's held back and it goes to pull back again, it's already back. So I think what I'm going to do is clean this up some more, get all the bits off, clean up all the spring at the bottom and put it back together. And then fingers crossed, try again. All right, we're all cleaned up, so I'll drop the spring down in the hole. Plunger back in. It's all nice and free. So I've cleaned it all out some more. I kept filling it up with a syringe and some oil down there in the valley, so they should be nice and springy like that one. And this one is springs in and out nicely. So we'll put it back together and try it again. I think this is definitely where the problem is. Whether we can rectify it without stripping the car down, because just to get to that, basically the entire front of the car's got to come off, everything in the bay's got to come off. It is pretty involved, but this now, super springy. Let's see if it stays like that. Solenoid back on, let's try again. happy at the minute. Shame we haven't got an old school throttle cable so I could just whoop whoop and give it a rev. No, straight away. Got stuck. Ah, it's gone back down again now. Let's give it a couple more. Well, it didn't snag up anything that time. Something I did notice on the test drive there, I thought there was just two settings on idle and then with it running. But what I noticed is on idle, it's off, 0 degrees. Then as soon as you pass 1000 RPM, the solenoids turn on and you advance the time into 20 degrees. But then over 4,500 revs, it goes back to off and returns the timing to 0 degrees. So from 4,500 RPM all the way to the red line, the solenoids are actually off. So with my little one that was stuck on, it was rough at idle. It was where it's supposed to be between 1,000 and 4,500. But then above 4,500, that should have turned itself off. I'll show you turning it on and off. So it sits here perfectly on idle, adjustment status off, bang on 0 degrees. And as soon as it goes off idle, adjustment status goes on, and we're up to 21, 22. Then when you go to 4.5, so above 4.5, it is off. I think what I'm going to do now, I've had it up and down, warm, I've had it revving, I've had it sitting, I've had it idling, and nothing's got stuck at the minute. I think what I'm going to do is leave it for today, come back tomorrow when it's cold again, see if it'll do a nice cold start, take it out for a run, and see where we are from there. We are back on the next day. Engine's stone cold again, so let's see how we get on with a cold start. We'll just check the codes from yesterday and no codes, which is a good start. We'll get our measuring blocks up. 090. So cold start, both sides have gone to adjustment on. So on the cold start on idle, both sides have gone adjustment on and they're both round where they should be. When it warms up, it goes off fast idle, whether these come back down. But it's all sounding good. I say it's never rattled, which is why it was a bit strange that we're having cam chain faults. So we'll let this warm up a bit. Hopefully our two numbers will drop back down. Yeah, there we go. Come off cold start. These have both popped down. So I'll just watch this for a little while. I'll give it a little rev, get this on and off, on and off. So the big question is, where are these little bits coming from? I'm not quite sure what they're made of. I wondered whether they're little bits of carbon just that have dropped from around inside the engine, but it's always had a fantastic service history, and when I had the rocker covers off, it wasn't all sludged up in there. I've had the sump off and it's all nice and clean in there. So I wonder whether maybe it's a bit of sealer or from a gasket that's dropped down into the sump and gone up. But these bits are too big to get through the strainer in the bottom of the oil pump pickup. And even then, if they did get through, they'd get caught in the oil filter before they made it into the oil gallery. Also, on these tensioners, they have a screen on the inlet of them because they have the inlet oil passage where they bolt to the head, it goes through its valves and then just squirts back into the rocker cover out the side. So with this screen, because this can be another problem of these, if it's a poorly serviced engine, the oil ways can get gunged up, then the screen going into the tensioner can get clogged, which can also cause these problems. But that's not the case here. But this does mean that it's actually something inside the tensioner that's breaking down. So last night I was having a chat with my dad, theorising about current events, namely this, and once we ruled out that it can't be coming from elsewhere in the engine, it must be in the tensioner itself, we started wondering what it could be. So as the tensioner is spring loaded into the 0 degrees position, and then oil pressure makes it go into the 20 degrees position, as soon as that oil pressure stops, it will snap back up into the 0 under the spring pressure. Now to stop the metal on metal contact, there must be some kind of buffer, some kind of bump stop on there, and we're wondering over the years, that's just broken up and now bits of it are just floating around inside the tensioner itself. So as I have got a spare set, the old ones from the S6, I'm thinking we might chop them up, to have a look what's actually inside and the possible suspects about where these little bits of debris could be coming from. So this side is spring loaded, but all that does is take up the chain tension so it doesn't rattle. So this comes out, and the spring in there. So that takes up the chain tension, but it's this bit in the middle that moves up and down for the VVT. So let's see if we can have a look in here. Right, let's see what it makes of this. So here we are, all dissected. So this is what is inside. This is the plunger that goes up and down. Now on the outside, left and right look the same, and you can in fact fit them the wrong way around. So you've got to check the part numbers, because inside they are in fact different. One goes up on revs and the other one goes down on revs. So here's the one we've just chopped open, and this is that bump stop that I was talking about on the end. But this is more of a round O-ring. This is the one we're working with. This is the passenger side one, and as you can see, it's just got two seals on the ends. But it's this seal here. As you can see, this is more of a square seal, and that looks very much like the bits we've been finding. So is it one of them that's breaking up slightly, or just got a little nick in it? Not sure. We've got these O-rings as well, but these are little small round green ones, so I don't think it's them. But this is the side we're dealing with, and this has got the big black O-rings going round. So could this be our culprit? Here are our little bits I've been finding. See, they're hard plastic, but I don't know if they are part of that. Does look kind of the same. Looks a possibility that it's these rings here that are maybe breaking up a bit, or perished, or just got a little crack. Not sure. They're definitely hard plastic, and it does feel the same as this. And all that's in there is those two, and there's our little bump stop on the end. Maybe this here is looking like the culprit. Well, we're all back together. I've just taken it out for another test drive, and it hasn't got stuck at all. I've just taken the solenoid off again, took the plunger out, and there's no parts, no debris at all in there at the moment. But the main thing I am relieved about is it's not a tensioner shoe issue. Usually when this code comes on, just like in my S6, it is a cue for imminent danger and it's just about to explode. It's happened on this before because, like I said, that's the reason he changed these tensioners, and I did confirm this when I took the sump off, and I did find some little remains of the part. But when I look at it on the computer, we've got 0 degrees on both banks to the crank, which means it is perfectly aligned. And in high rev mode, when the solenoids are activated, again, both sides match. We're at about 21 degrees. You let off and it goes back to 0 degrees. So we haven't got a timing issue on this. What happens when the shoes wear, timing goes out and it's past its tolerance, but that's not what's happening here. All that's happening, it's got two settings of 0 degrees and 20 degrees, and it's just getting stuck. So I'm now not so worried. I know I'm not going to go out driving. It's all going to explode and I'm going to get stuck. All it is it just advances timing slightly when it's sitting there on idle, which is why we get our wobble. But this doesn't mean that we're out of the woods just yet, because obviously these small parts are coming from the tensioner, which means one of the O-rings or one of the seals is breaking down, which is why we've got our bits circulating inside. So now is the question, what do we do next? If I was to get both tensioners and chains from TPS, it's £1,700 in parts. Plus, for a good quality cam belt kit and water pump, you're about £350. Coolant and oil change, you're well over £2,000 in parts, which I don't know if I'm in a position to spend that kind of money. On the flip side, you go on eBay and you see these tensioners for £100 arriving from China in a plain brown cardboard box, and in usual circumstances I would avoid them like the plague. I would never imagine fitting anything like that to my car. However, when I was looking down in the tensioner, I found a part number of it of KA31308. When you look at that on eBay, these tensioners are actually only £101, and it even says in the box from China, unbranded. Big red flag. On the flip side, These have been on this car for 5 years. I've done 30,000 miles and haven't had a single issue. I do a lot less miles, so in another 5 years, I would have done half that mileage, a pair of tensioners for just over £200. In all honesty, it's not something I would usually do, fitting cheap Chinese parts to your car. However, saving £2,000 is quite appealing, and these have proved themselves to be reliable and not caused any problems. So after 5 years, strictly speaking, it is due for another cam belt, which was my plan, to strip the whole front end off this winter, give it a cam belt and water pump. I wasn't going to touch the chains because they're not usually a serviceable item, but I think now it is something I may have to consider. But most of all, I'm just so relieved it's not a guide problem, because if they go and it bends all your valves, you're at your £2,000 for parts, but then it's head off and you're much more involved in the car. That is an engine out job. So I'm going to carry on using it now. I know what the problem is, so when I come to do the cam belt, I think I'm going to have to look at these tensioners. But what would you do? We've got on the one hand £1,700 worth of parts, which could do another 150,000 miles. Or we've got £200 of parts, which have honestly proved themselves the last 5 years, haven't caused me any trouble. So I'm going to wrap this video up now. Let me know what you think, but I can sleep soundly tonight knowing that the RS is going to be okay. So until next time, make sure you have fun.